Welcome to the Bookish Hour with your hosts, Sarah E. Burr and J.C. Kenney. And we are live. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Bookish Hour. I am Sarah E. Burr, author of the upcoming Dearly Deleted Cozy Christmas Mystery coming your way.
And I am J.C. Kenney, who is your co-host, and I am reading Dearly Deleted, which is coming soon your way. And Sarah, this is so exciting. We got a good friend joining us tonight. It's Baby Friday evening. It's the holiday season. So I think it's time to get bookish.
Yes, there's no better. It's the most wonderful time of the year, and we've been having such a wonderful time this season talking with so many amazing authors. And this evening will be no exception because we are joined by the wonderful Linda Norlander. Linda, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. I am so excited to be here.
For our folks who have been with us since the beginning, you may remember Linda, I believe, was like episode 3 or 4 of when we first started doing the Bookish Hour. So it's really nice to kind of come full circle and catch up with you and see what's been going on. But for our viewers who may not be familiar with you and your work, do you mind just sharing a little bit about what you write and maybe a little bit about your background?
Oh, sure. Right now, what we're going to be talking about is a series that takes place in the Northwoods of Minnesota, and my main character, Jamie, is a transplant from New York City. So you can imagine she grew up in New York City, and now she's facing things like septic systems and forest fires and things like that. We're going to be talking, I think, tonight about Death of a Fox, which is actually the 4th book in the series, and each book takes place in a different season. The reason I wanted to do that was because I really wanted to feature what life is like and what the seasons are like in the Northwoods of Minnesota, because it happens to be a very favorite place of mine. So Death of a Fox takes place in spring. The first book in the series took place in the summer, where she met her first mosquito, and then we went to fall and winter, where she had to look at YouTube videos to figure out how to drive in the snow. So that's the series. My background: I have been writing since I was probably 6 years old. My first novel that I sat down to write, I think I was about 11. I decided to write an autobiography of a puppy from the viewpoint of the puppy. And this is what I can remember from it. I said, I take pen and paw with a little difficulty to write my memoirs.
Oh my goodness.
And the rest, I'm afraid, is lost to history.
Well, one thing, Linda, that you mentioned about your protagonist, Jamie, where she is a transplant from New York into the woods of Minnesota, I always find the descriptions that Jamie gives us to be really funny, because I grew up in the woods of Maine and now I live in New York, and I don't have a septic system. I have like community water and community electricity, and we rarely lose power here, knock on wood. And so it's funny to see the kind of the flip side when I'm reading about her, which I think is it really paints a picture of both the setting that she left and then the world around her and how she's adjusting to it.
Yeah, thank you. I really wanted to be able to get that perspective and be able to show some of the quirkiness. Every community every region has its own quirks, and this way she could respond to them.
Mhm.
Yeah, sure, you betcha. And she's going, what? And the community responds to her by thinking that she's a member of the Sopranos, because the series, because she speaks with a New York accent, and of course everybody in northern Minnesota thinks New York accent must be mafia. So
So, yeah,
those,
so
those
along
are
that,
fun things.
I was going to say, since you opened that door, Linda,
Oh,
I'm not accusing you of anything. No, no
uh-huh,
worries there.
uh-huh.
But the fact that you portray, you've told us in the past when you were last here, you live in Minnesota. So can you kind of give us a little bit of behind the scenes peek of Jamie's, how you bring Jamie's New York background, how you made that, or how you make that so convincing? Are you originally from New York, or did you spend some time there? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
um, that's a good question. I based some of Jamie's background actually on my daughter-in-law, my son and daughter-in-law lived in New York for several years. So we
Okay.
would visit them. They lived in Queens. So that gave me a sort of a sense of, so Jamie, of course, at some point lived in Queens too. And so that's where a lot of that came from, was the experience I had with them.
I love
Well,
being able
that's one of.
to pull
Go
that
ahead.
from it. I was just saying, like, being able to pull from the lives of the people around us, and these like lived
Yeah,
experiences that we have that we can kind of dig into and really flesh out while we're writing.
right, right.
And I think that's one of the things that, for me, makes it very entertaining to read a book with characters like you have, Linda. Because where you have such stereotypically opposite types, big New York City, backwoods of Minnesota. Because being from Indiana, where I am, we're pretty vanilla. Where we're in the
Yeah.
middle. And so I just think that's I appreciate as a reader that you went ahead and that you're bringing those life experiences to the
Hmm.
story, because it just makes it so much more a more fun and a better read.
Agreed.
And one of the other things that I brought into it, northern Minnesota has a strong Native American community, and I wanted to also feature that without as Jamie is about a quarter Ojibwe. That's part of the reason she moved to northern Minnesota, was that this cabin belonged to her grandmother, but she knows nothing. Her mother left for the East Coast and never talked about her Native American background. So some of it for Jamie is learning who these people are, and what is this all about.
That's a nice, being able to go on the character's journey with them,
Hmm.
and be able to learn. Not only is the character learning, but the audience is learning as well.
Right.
And speaking of our audience members, saying hello to folks that are joining us live this evening. We have Mizan, we have DHB, we have Farmhouse Reader. Mizan is also reading Dearly Deleted. Wonderful. Hopefully you're
Good.
enjoying it. And also is commenting that she loves when a season is a prominent part of the book. So Linda, so Death of a Fox takes place at spring. I imagine that spring in Minnesota is a little bit different than spring in, where I live, New York. How does the season really come into play for the story or even the mystery?
I think the season kind of plays off the mystery itself. The season, of course, it's green. Everything, the wildflowers are starting to bloom. Everybody's pulling themselves out of the gloom of late winter, and late winter in northern Minnesota is, as far as I'm concerned, is awful. You never know if it's going to snow or if it's going to rain, or you just think that spring is here and then you get dumped with 15 inches of snow. So people are kind of coming alive, and that renewal is the setting, and yet is the season, and yet the setting is this old abandoned TB sanatorium, this kind of hulking place. So it's sort of I'm trying to contrast the two.
Well, there's definitely, the fact that you have everything coming alive, but yet your book is called Death of a Fox.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
If you could, without, I guess, giving away too much, could you share a little bit about what the mystery is that Jamie finds herself involved in, and maybe what inspired this particular installment?
Mm-hmm. Jamie is eking out a living as a freelance editor, and she has this friend in town, Clarence, who is a retired 80-something lawyer who is part of her adventures, and Clarence has a client, and a reclusive old woman who lives on this old abandoned an estate that used to be a private TB sanatorium, and she wants to write her memoirs. So Clarence says, "Oh, I know somebody who can help you with that," and they go out, they meet her, and there is a rumor kind of floating in the background that there was a murder that occurred in this sanatorium at some time, and there's just a sense of foreboding, and that's part of what she gets involved in. Was somebody murdered? What happened? Where did it happen? Those types of things. So that's sort of the premise for it.
Now, is there a you talk about this murder that had happened in the past? Is there like a present day murder that's also like weaving everything together?
Yes. The elderly lady, whose name is Nella Fox, by the way, has a cousin who was caretaking her, and she is found dead in the sanatorium at the same time that Jamie is visiting to work on the memoirs. So there's a new death and an old death lurking behind. So there are two things to figure out here.
Okay, folks, it's the holiday season. You got a 2-for-1 here. Not just one mystery, but get 2 for the price of 1. So you all know what to do. Treat yourselves to an early Christmas, Hanukkah, Festivus, Kwanzaa present, and go ahead and get Death of a Fox right now. Okay.
All right. Thank you.
You bet. Yeah. So, kind of along that line, Linda, one of the things that I'm curious about is an old tuberculosis sanatorium that just conjures spooky images that to me makes me think like Halloween horror film, something really scary. Why did you pick that setting? I mean, it's something that certainly, I guess maybe I'm answering my own question by saying it really draws a visceral reaction from me. Is that why you did it, or is there some other reason for choosing that?
Well, first of all, I love the concept of old abandoned buildings, and that their walls hold stories. So that's just a general fascination of mine. But how this came to be was kind of an odd way. I have this wonderful neighbor, Grace, and she's 93 years old. She's British. She lived through the London Blitz. She's had, quite a bit of experience, and I will go over and have tea with her. Well, I was sitting with her having tea, and of course she knows how to make tea, and she was she was telling me about when she was 18 or 19 years old. You know, World War II is over. She and her family have survived it, and then she gets tuberculosis. And so she was telling me about her experience in a sanatorium. And the more she talked about it, the more I thought, abandoned building, sanatorium, interesting. Maybe that's the building that I want. So I did some research on rural sanatoriums and found out they are everywhere. At least in Minnesota, they were everywhere, and they were either, you know, community run, or there were also the private ones that existed. So I found a couple of them and then read about them and got photos of them. So I had a sense of what this hospital looked like, and that it was very realistic to have something like that. And it was a business for some people, the private sanatoriums. So that's really where it all came to be. So I had my building, that then I had to have the story to go with it, and of course the murder, because it's a murder mystery.
Now, when you are, so you've mentioned that there is a murder that took place in the past, and then you have the present day murder. Did you find that it was tricky to kind of keep both mysteries like progressing at the same pace? Or, you know, was there one mystery that you personally felt more invested in the other? Or were there struggles that you encountered with having kind of two timelines that you're working with?
Yeah. You know, I don't think that was so much of an issue for me, but and I have to confess that the old mystery, you know, the historic mystery murder, was more fascinating to me as an author. You know, and how do I create this, and how do I portray it? But I also I also wanted something, you know, that Jamie could respond to right away. So I think the issue for me was weaving them both together into a story that made sense. Yeah.
I definitely hear you on the historical aspect being kind of really interesting to dig into. For one of my Glenmire Wynn mystery books, I have a buried treasure mystery that, you know, there's this rumor around town that there's been buried treasure on this property since the 1800s. And this mystery is kind of, you know, going along with time, but then present day events start weaving together. And I just found that the world that I was able to create in the historic period of, like, you know, the characters and what they were up to, and the goings on around town, it was so much of a different experience than actually creating the present day, what was going on. And so it sounds like you may have had kind of a similar experience where, like, building out that history was really engaging for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And then of course I had Grace's own personal experience and then I did research on, you know, how did they treat tuberculosis back in those days, and what was it, and how did it change? Because after World War II, what happened was that they during World War II, they developed the antibiotics, and really started to understand what it was that was causing TB. And at the time of Grace's experience, really, they thought fresh air. They would have these patients out in the middle of winter wrapped up in blankets, but they had to have the fresh air and bed rest, and some other treatments, but they didn't have the antibiotics. And that's part of what ended up causing these hospitals all over the area to close, is that they didn't need them anymore, which is wonderful. But I'm a nurse. My background is that I'm a nurse. So when you get into the medical stuff, I find it fascinating.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
You know, your story, the death of a fox, it reminds me a lot of the still life TV adaptation that came out about this time last year. That was Inspector Gamache. I think it was on Amazon Prime, maybe.
Oh,
Oh, that
And
was the Three Pines.
Three
yes,
Pines. Yeah.
yeah, Still Life. I think they called it Still Life. And
Mhm.
and the reason I bring it up is because in that case, you know, we end up having the two different timelines with, in that case, it was a former, I think it was a former
Right.
orphanage.
Mhm.
But I guess one of the things I'm curious about, Linda, using that one as kind of a comparison. Hey, we're talking about you and Louise Penny in the same breath. This is nice.
Whoa.
Yeah.
This is a first.
All right. Well, hey, you deserve it. But one of the things that in the Still Life, TV show was the fact that, you know, you have Chief Inspector Gamache, a professional investigating the case. So I guess what I'd really like to know is, we often can think of our amateur sleuths of being able to handle something in the here and now, you know, because you can go around, talk to people, maybe pick up some evidence, some things like that. But how did your amateur sleuth go about, without giving too much away, if you can, gathering enough information to be able to crack a case that is, you know, so that happened so long ago?
Well, as I said, her she met Nella Fox and ended up at the sanatorium estate to work on Nella's memoirs. And what Nella did was give her a whole box of old diaries. So we could go back in time and look at what Nella had written, you know, as a little girl, and that helped, you know, kind of create the history and give Jamie the information that she needed to kind of, yes, to crack the case.
Well, you bring up another interesting line of questioning, I think, Linda, regarding the memoir and exploring how one writes a memoir. I'm assuming that, you know, figuring out like how to gain insight into a person's life, that, you know, that was that you had to look into that and figure out like, okay, how should Jamie approach this? What were some like interesting things that maybe you were surprised to learn about the process, or that you think that maybe a lot of people don't know that goes into, you know, writing a memoir?
Well, I think one of the things was that Nella wanted this memoir, but she really didn't want to write it. She wanted somebody else to write it, and she wasn't particularly helpful. It's like she had this story, but and she wanted it told, but she wasn't sure how she wanted it told. So that's kind of how I went forward with it. So it really, the book is not really about her memoir writing at all. It's more about the give and take between Jamie and Nella. Jamie trying to draw the story out and oftentimes getting nowhere.
I can imagine that, you know, how you were just phrasing that with, you know, Nella knows what she wants to say but doesn't know how to say it. It's like, man, I wish I could go up to somebody and be like, hey, this is the idea that I have, like, do something with it. Rather than me having to figure it out myself.
Right. Here, so she gives Jamie this whole box of old diaries. You know, read all this and figure it out for me. But I'm not going to tell you.
Oh, geez. you know, one of the things I'm curious kind of about Jamie, because it's been a minute since you were last here, and you're now on book 4 of the series. Can you talk a little bit about Jamie's growth over the course of now 4 books, from, first moving there, totally fish out of water. And now, she's got people asking her, or kind of at least, for help with something. I mean, a memoir, that's a pretty personal kind of a big thing, I would imagine. I've never tried one. I'm not important enough. But could you kind of talk a little bit about Jamie's kind of story arc to this point?
That is a good question, because I think for both of you, I know you write series. So you start out with that first book, and your character, your first book, you're really, as an author, learning who your characters are. And then as you write them, they take more of a life of their own. And I think that what I've seen over this story arc with Jamie is that she's more three-dimensional. She's more fleshed out, and then there are all these extra characters who just pop up. Jamie has a dog, has a rescue dog, kind of a Labrador, loving dog named Bronte, and Bronte is delightful. When I sat down to write the first book of this series, she had a cat that she had brought from New York. And I got into maybe the end of the first chapter, and I hated the cat. So, and this is the joy of being an author. Cat's gone.
Okay.
She needs a dog. But the other thing is that as you're writing a series, more people pop in, so that by now, with her in springtime, she has a whole community of people that she knows, and there are recurring characters. I mean, some of the characters, of course, especially the ones you kill off, you're not going to see again. But some of them kind of grow on you, and that was the other thing. The old lawyer Clarence, I had no intention of writing Clarence. He just popped up one day, and I'm sure you understand that. You're writing along, say, well, where did you come from? And I love him. He's a dear character now, but he wasn't. I hadn't conceived of him. So as the series moves along, it's almost like a family. You get to know them as an author and understand them. And she's become far more comfortable in her community, and more engaged with. I mean, she loves her cabin by the lake, and I think she would do anything to be able to keep that cabin and keep her life now. Not so sure about it when she first moved.
I love what you mentioned about these characters that just kind of weasel their way into our hearts as the writers. I am working on the third book in the Trending Topic Mysteries, kind of, doing edits, getting everything revised. And, thinking back to when I was writing it, I had a very clear idea of who my killer was. Mm-hmm. However, as I started to write him or them in the into
Spoiler
the book,
alert.
I realized that it's like, man, I kind of like this person, and I don't want him to be the killer. So I ended up being like, I'm gonna change my killer, because I actually really liked the character that I thought that was gonna go on this killing spree. And it was so bizarre, because that for me had never happened up to this point in my writing. I've always been very like, this mystery is the nuclear unit and everything expands around it. But this time I was like, my characters it was so driven by what the characters wanted that I had to shuffle things around so that the person that I wanted to be the killer isn't the killer. And it was a really strange experience. Like, wow, now they're one of like my favorite like supporting characters that I have.
Well, I think that's one of the joys of writing for me, is that when I sit down, I have an idea of what's going to happen, but I don't quite know. And it's like you go into this different world, this writing zone, and things happen, like the characters popping in, but also maybe I'm not sure as I'm sitting here who done it. And maybe I have to just keep writing until I find out. And I've heard other authors say the same thing. I mean, there are the writers who are very careful about outlining, and they have everything figured out before they sit down, which is fine. I don't. And part of the joy is finding out what's going to happen next. And then if I don't, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, Linda, one of the things that this brings up is I don't want to say that Sarah and I have a disagreement about our murder victims. We take a different approach. I'll call it that. Sarah has, and we've talked about this on the show a couple of times, Sarah, I'm sure you'll remember this, that Sarah's murder victims tend to be like just bad folks. Mm-hmm. And I like to think that my murder victims are not necessarily that way. They're not good enough that you really are brokenhearted when they die, but they're not like these horrible bad people that Sarah's always killing off. Do you kind of have a type of either victim? For example, is there something, every story is going to be different. All the characters are going to be different, but are there some characteristics you look for both in someone who's going to be your victim and then maybe who your killer is going to be also?
As far as the victim goes, probably not. The one absolute rule I have is that there will be no children involved. No, can't do that. But in the various books, the victims have been very different. Some of them not such nice people. Some of them.
I think we have a little technical difficulty. So I'm going to chime in, and usually, yes, I like to kill off people that I don't have a problem killing off. But I think the last 3 books that I've written, I've gotten so emotionally attached to my victims, and they are, I see the value in having somebody that you're like, man, I'm really sad that this person's gone.
Yeah.
And in the trending topic book that I'm working on, it was actually like, wow, this was really unfortunate that I killed this woman off because she had so much to give the world. And so it's a really cool angle to explore. And it makes me feel like a horrible human being because it's like, why did I do this? Why did I get rid of them? But you're right. It adds such a different dimension to the reader's experience of man, this person had so much going for them. So I won't say I disagree anymore. I will just say that it's a lot more fun for me to kill off people that I don't like.
It's like, hey, I figure after Allie Cobb book 3, when I killed off the town librarian who everybody loved, it's I was pretty much irredeemable at that point.
Well, I mean, at that point, you threw her in had so much things coming up that oh my gosh, is she, has this I don't want to give anything away, but is she a bad person? So it was but that's what makes it engaging. So Linda, continue with what you were talking about with your victims.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll try. I know I froze up and had to.
Hey, it's live TV. That's okay.
Yeah,
and you're back with us TV. Now.
Yeah.
Okay. As far as the killers go, again, I don't think I have a particular type. It just, again, it's such an organic process for me. And Sarah, I knew exactly what you were talking about when you said the person that was going to be the killer in your book, the more you wrote, the more you thought, oh, but I like him too much. I'm really struggling with that in another book that I'm working on. That, well, wait a minute, no. He can't be the killer, or he can't be the killer because too engaging. So I don't feel like I have a type, no.
Okay. I was just kind of curious, just because, it's one of those things where, kind of not to dive too far down into the craft of writing rabbit hole, but we are taught as writers that for your victim, you want to be careful, because you want somebody that want to have the victim be somebody that the readers are going to care about, but aren't going to get angry with you for bumping them off.
Right, like the librarian.
Yeah. Oops. Yeah.
Yeah.
But at the same, then figuring out how to have the murderer be somebody who is also engaging, because to be fair, the murderer is the hero of his or her own story. So it's Linda, like you said, it's a fun challenge.
Yeah.
I think with the trying to figure out those stories and those motivations, and making sure that like your victim is somebody that people aren't going to get mad at you for. One thing that I always kind of fall back on is it's a new character. It's somebody that's like, oh, we haven't really encountered them before. But in my Court of Mystery series, where it's spanned 9 books at this point, like we've met a lot of different people, and for the final book, like I want to do this thing where it's like I want to bring everybody back together, and one person doesn't make it, but I have to make sure that I'm picking the right person, because otherwise it's like, ooh, like it's a gamble when you decide to kind of off somebody.
Yeah.
And speaking of offing somebody, Linda, I'd like to change gears a little bit, because believe it or not, we're about 25 minutes left in the show. This has just been delightful. I just want to say real quick that Mizanne commented about the seasons earlier, that I went to Alexandria, Minnesota once. It was early June, so late spring. So June is spring in Minnesota. So you're nodding. So we're there. Yeah. As we were talking about before the show, you have a new series coming out with the first book making its debut. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I can tell you a little bit. I haven't, as I was discussing with you, I haven't got my elevator speech quite ready for it yet, but the series takes place in Minneapolis. And by the way, I'm almost a lifelong Minnesotan, but I live in Tacoma, Washington now. But the series takes place in Minneapolis. The main character is a school teacher in her mid-30s, and she has this upstairs neighbor in her apartment building, Mrs. Wilkins. Mrs. Wilkins is 84 years old, and one day, as Liza, the main character, is sitting, it's summer, she lost her summer teaching job, she's depressed, she's sitting binge watching NCIS over and over. And Mrs. Wilkins shows up and says that her niece is missing and they have to do something about it right now. And that's sort of the beginning. What we find out very quickly is that the niece has died of a drug overdose, and Mrs. Wilkins is determined that it wasn't an overdose, that it was murder, and that's how it moves along. The one little quirk with Liza is that she's an identical twin, and her twin, Charlie, died when she was 4 years old, had a congenital heart condition. But Charlie still, every once in a while, talks to her. And Liza doesn't, it's a voice in her head. But Charlie is the one that is the one that's poking her and saying, you got to help Mrs. Wilkins. Just go do it. And that's the book is called Death of Goldie's Mistress. Goldie is a cat that Liza inherits and doesn't like. Now, I don't want you to get the idea that I don't like cats. I do like cats. But in my writing, they just don't seem to work for me. But and it's coming out hopefully in February.
Okay.
One thing that I've noticed with both the Cabin by the Lake mystery and this new series is that there's this really nice nod to generational, like different generations working together and befriending one another. And I think that that's a really beautiful thing to showcase and to highlight, like how much you can learn from people that grew up during a different time that you did, whether it's, you know, the person who's older learning from the person who's younger, or the person who's younger learning from the person who's older. Is that something that you purposefully pursued, or is that just like a natural, you know, a natural relationship for you to write about because you've had those influences in your own life?
I was very purposeful with it, with this one, because I did like the interaction of the generations. And the other thing is that I can use Mrs. Wilkins, who is an unrepentant liberal, by the way, and I can have Liza reacting to it as a, you know, as a 30-something, and going, oh yeah, there's Mrs. Wilkins, she's on a peace march again, you know, and just being kind of puzzled by it. So it's a fun interaction to do. And Mrs. Wilkins can be my political mouthpiece, I guess. And I might be sorry I said that, but
No, not at all. What I was going to say is when you mentioned this series, this new book being set in Minneapolis, I immediately thought, I got to ask, has she met Mary Richards, or at least the statue of Mary?
No.
No.
I hadn't even thought about that. Oh my gosh.
Right. Well, there you go. Yeah. And yeah, for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, all I'm going to say is Google Mary Richards WJM TV, and you can thank me later.
Yes.
We also have Mizan chiming in that her cats are watching this with her. So hopefully, hopefully there's been no offense. There's been no offense given. I will say that cats, for me, I've written 2 of them into my books now. One of them barely makes an appearance because he's always just like skittering around and hiding. But the other is very much like, this is my kingdom and you humans are just here to serve me in whatever capacity that I want. And I really like having the interactions with my supporting characters when they come to my character's home, and having to deal with this cat that's like, what are you doing here? Like, why? Like, that's my chair. What are you sitting in it for? So I think the, you know, dogs are very much more like welcoming and friendly, and Bronte sounds like somebody who is always up for a visitor.
Yes. And by the way, to the cats that are watching this program, Goldie does have a very important role to play in this, and no pets were injured during
no harm in the writing of this book.
Yeah, the writing of this book.
I love the name Goldie. That's really cute.
Yeah. And hey, we're all animal lovers here, and that's what matters most. Yeah. So Linda, I guess unfortunately with our time running short now, we've talked a lot about Death of a Fox, book 4 in Jamie's adventures. Can you tell us, after this book, will we be seeing more of Jamie?
Yes, we will. The next book in the series is called Death of a Dreamcatcher, and it will be out in May. And the little piece I can say about it is that Jamie has a boyfriend named Jim, and she discovers
that name.
Yeah, Jamie and Jim. They're great names. And Jamie discovers that Jim had a brother who drowned 20 years ago at a graduation party, and his body was never found. And that's going to launch the whole story.
Ooh, well, that certainly sounds intriguing. Queuing up the intrigue. Linda, it's 2023 is almost over. Hard to believe that the year has flown by. What we thought it might be nice to do, with this also being our final show of the year before we take a little holiday hiatus and come back full swing in 2024. Would you care to share any big wins that you felt as a writer throughout the year, or like just really proud accomplished moments, or any other books that came out that you feel like, what are you grateful for 2023?
last summer, I did a book signing in White Bear Lake, Minnesota. We were back in Minnesota for a visit at Lake Country Booksellers, and that was one of the most fun events. Just to have people coming up and friends. I saw a lot of friends, but I also saw people who I'd never met before who had read my books. I think that's the
Well, that's
most
cool.
exciting thing. Yeah, yeah. What? I don't know you, and you want my autograph. I'm going to have to practice spelling my name, I guess. So, that was very exciting. And as far as you know, books that I read a lot of mystery books, but I also try to read different kinds of literature. And the book that I read this year that really it comes right back to mind now is Lessons in Chemistry. I would highly recommend it.
I just finished watching the series.
Oh, you watched the series?
Yeah.
Okay.
So have you seen the series, Linda?
I have not seen the series.
Okay.
I have not, but it was such a great look at what life was like for a very accomplished woman in the 50s, with this great humor and the story that went with it. So, well worth the read.
So, JC, you'll have to read it. Linda, you'll have to watch it, and then we'll
I'll
have to have a discussion to see.
Hey, we're book lovers here, so I'm going to say right now, I'm sure the book is better than the series. With all due respect to Brie Larson, I adore her, but we're writers, so we got to always say the book was better, right?
Right. Yes. Absolutely.
I think that's a widely accepted, widely accepted comment. JC, what about you? What do you, when you reflect on 2023? What were some big wins and big moments for you?
Well, on a personal note, for the first time in 27 years, my wife Nancy and we are empty nesters. And literally for those who don't know, my older kiddo, the 27-year-old, has had a lot of problems in their life, both physically, both with physical condition and mentally and emotionally. But they have moved to Cincinnati, started a new job. They're close to their significant other, so that's a huge win. Younger kiddo moved, got his own place in September. So we went from 5 adults and a cat in the house in early September to the middle of November in just like literally just to 2 months to just Nancy and I and Maria. So so that's been pretty exciting, on a personal level, because as I've been thinking about that a lot recently because of the time of year when we do these kind of things, and how as a parent, one of your jobs is to hopefully raise your kids to the point that they're ready to go out on their own. And, so right now, at least, who knows, one or both of them may move in someday. You never know. But that's feeling kind of big right now. So I'm very happy about that. It's very quiet around the house, believe me. I love Maria, but she doesn't have much to say. So, and as far as the writing gig, probably the thing I'm most excited about is that I have turned in and I've almost finished with the editing, and I have the cover and the pre-order links for my first Elmo Simpson Mysteries book, my new series that's going to be debuting in September, set in Florida. So I'm really excited about that, because that was a book I just started kind of on a lark and have had just so much fun writing. And so that was kind of a big win, their sync as we've gotten closer. So how about you, Sarah?
I look back and I think about everything that happened and can't believe that it was all in one period of time. Very grateful that I was able to get Tag Me for Murder out, Over My Dead blog out, and Dearly Deleted is coming in right under the line. So 3 books out in 1 year. Makes me tired, but also very, very happy and very grateful. And Linda, this kind of speaks to what you were talking about when, you went to this in-person event. When I was at Malice Domestic this past year, and having people come up and saying, where's JC? Like, I wanted to talk to my bookish people, and having so many folks that were like, I love watching your program. I watch it while, my partner is watching sports on TV and I'm giggling, and they're like, what are you laughing about? Like, what is going on? And to know that, there are folks that are out there that are contributing to our program and being a part of this is really, really super special. And the fact that we now have our very own theme song that Aiden composed was a huge win, I think, and really, really exciting that we kind of got to take this whole enterprise up to the next level. So that's something to be very grateful for. And thinking about 2024 and how difficult it is to say, there's got to be an easier way. 2024, I don't know. But looking forward to the next trending topic mystery coming out, the next Glenmeyer Whim mystery coming out, and then finishing my Court of Mystery series and wrapping that up, and so that I can focus on more book blogger mysteries. So lots of things to get on that checklist.
Yeah, Sarah, you're a machine. And so I'm just glad I get to kind of tag along for the ride. So
I wish I was a machine, because I feel like then I would be able to function a little bit more like, but I'm extremely grateful that, we've come this far and been able to do this much, and hope for many more things to come. So
yeah. Speaking of which, more things to come. Linda, it's recommendation time. What are you watching? What are you listening to? What are you reading? Got any recommendations for books, movies, TV, podcasts, whatever for us?
Actually, I do, and this is an old series that we kind of stumbled upon. I think it was a PBS series called Last Tango in Halifax.
Oh,
okay.
And it, I believe it's the first season was 2012, but it's you talk about intergenerational and how important that is. Well, it's a man and a woman who loved each other when they were 16, and for reasons that are later explained, they weren't able to get together, and now they're in their mid 70s and they have found each other. And it's a soap opera, but it is so well done. It takes place in England. I'm not exactly sure where Halifax is, but we have been kind of binge watching it. Okay, we can only watch one episode a night, and it's like, oh, is it time for Halifax?
Very nice. So reading anything, any books that you want to send a shout out to, other than your own fabulous books, of course?
Oh, okay. Well, I did tell you about Lessons in Chemistry, and I'm afraid nothing is just jumping out at me right now.
That's all right. I mean, and I do want to mention that Sharon chimed in, who is watching us, said that she loved Lessons in Chemistry. So there you go.
Good.
Absolutely. Sarah, how about you?
What am I reading? So I just finished. Everyone knows that I've been on my manga journey this past year. I just finished a really nice series that was called Sweat and Soap. Weird title. They all have weird titles, but like it's just about a couple that they work at a soap company together, and they meet each other and fall in love. And it's a beautiful little love story that was really entertaining and kind of was very light for me. Like, after I've been staring at a computer screen all day long, it's like, oh, it's nice to look at pictures and fewer words. For podcasts, I have two recommendations. One is a very short podcast. It's only 5 episodes. It's called Mortal Sin, and it is by the host is Josh Mankiewicz, who is one of my Dateline guys that I also listen to on the Dateline podcast. But he explores this. It takes place in Washington, Christ Community Church, where this man's wife, the pastor's wife, dies in a fire. And then it comes to fruition that did she really die in the fire, or was she dead before the fire was set? And everything that unfolds from there. Super, super twisted, very riveting, really well done. And it's very short, again, only 5 episodes. And I just started a new podcast today called Case Files. And it's just a very much like going through these very dark crimes that I was like, they're pretty dark. And I'm like, oh, I don't know if this is like really my, like, I can get into this, because there's absolutely like no joking or light brevity at all. So it's like, if you really just like straight gritty true crime, this podcast is for you. As for what we're watching, we are, and Linda had mentioned soap opera, how Last Tango in Halifax is a soap opera. We're watching the OC from, this is the early 2000s. This was like my soap opera that I watched when I was in high school. But George has never seen it. And how we came to be watching it is a long story, but there's also a movie called Invitation to a Murder that is, I believe, out on Amazon Prime. Very much like a Agatha Christie fanfic. Entertaining enough. Wasn't an amazing movie, but it was a good mystery movie. I enjoyed it. But one of the actresses in it was from the OC, and I was like, George, you have to see what this woman like. You have to see her in the OC. And now we're like almost at the end of season 1, so we're having fun with that one.
Nice.
What about you, JC?
So I want to mention a book that I actually listened to on audio, which is a rarity for me because my attention span isn't very good. Play the Fool. It is a thriller that from an author, Lena Chern. It's her debut novel, and it's an interesting murder, maybe mystery, where the main character, Katie, she's a little bit of a grifter. Her main thing is she gives tarot readings, with tarot cards, and how that kind of accidentally gets her sucked into looking for someone who turns up missing. So I really enjoyed that. As far as what I've been watching, it is the season for Jim and Nancy to watch cooking shows. Since we finished the Great British Bake Off, we are currently watching Selena and Chef. This is on HBO. It's Selena Gomez, and basically the upshot is it started in 2020 when we were all stuck at home. And so she came up with this idea that she likes to cook. She's not very good at it. So the show is the setup is that she's in her kitchen and she invites a world famous chef to appear via video. And that chef coaches her through making a meal. And so it's a lot of fun because, my wife and I were big Selena fans because of Only Murders in the Building. And we love cooking shows this time of year. And it's fun. Selena Gomez is just amazing with everything she does in the world. And she's still so down to earth and low key in this show. And there are always enough little things that she ends up making that my wife and I look at each other and it's like, we could maybe try that someday. So it's a lot of fun. So, we're always looking for those kind of shows that just kind of leave you smiling at the end of the day.
If you have Netflix, JC, you should check out Sugar Rush Christmas.
Okay.
That's one of my favorite baking shows to watch. There's just something, they've got a really good like rhythm with the different things that they're doing, and it's very enjoyable.
Okay.
We have Farmhouse Reader chiming in that Last Tango in Halifax is an awesome show. So, Linda, it sounds like good things to come as your binging continues. Mizan is also saying that Invitation to a Murder is free to watch on Tubi.
Cool.
For folks who are interested, it was, for me, thinking about the Agatha Christie adaptations that are coming out now that are directed by Kenneth Branagh. This was like, if those are A tier, I would say these are like B- tier, but it was still a good movie, and I don't want to discourage people from watching it.
Okay.
It was so interesting. I was like, wow, this is a really interesting. It was the first movie that I've watched in a long time where I I wasn't like, let's just skip to the end. I've been doing that so much lately where it's like, let's just figure it out.
Well, cool. Well, Linda, I hate to be the bearer of bad news because this is a bummer because our time is almost up and it's just been great getting to hang out with you again. Before we let you go, can you tell folks how they can find you online if you're doing anything in person, maybe over the next few weeks or into the new year, where people can connect with you?
I have a website and it's very easy. It's Norlander, one word.com.
Okay, I can handle that.
You can do that. Okay, all right. And I'm also on Facebook under Linda Norlander author, something like that.
Okay.
So.
Oh, and
Nice.
that reminded me, Linda, thank you for saying Facebook, because I also wanted to let folks know that there is, for people who are really active on Facebook groups, especially mystery groups, this weekend, there's like this ginormous author takeover party happening on the Cozy Mystery Party Facebook page. So if you're interested in meeting a ton of new authors and exploring all that's out there, I believe it kicks off tomorrow afternoon and runs into Sunday.
Nice.
And you'll see me there at 5 p.m. Sunday afternoon. So if you're still hanging in by that point, you'll see some of my stuff popping up. So if folks want to get into the holiday spirit, that's also a opportunity for them. Perfect. And so with that, our 2023 year of the Bookish Hour comes to a close. Everybody who joined us live for tonight's show, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, folks.
We so appreciate you and your engagement and just all of the support that you have given our show. We very much look forward to coming back in 2024. I think we're back within like the first 2 weeks. So you're not gonna be without bookish stuff for very long. But until then, I hope everyone has a wonderful holiday season, that everyone stays safe, healthy, and that you have a restful new year. And until then, stay bookish, everybody. Bye-bye.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays. Okay.
Oh my.
Okay. So I can speak now. Thank you. This was fun. This was a lot of fun. Great questions. If I'm ever on your show again, I will have a list of books. It was like, I can't remember everything I've read this year.
Linda, that's happened to me a couple of different times where it's like I know exactly what I'm